Hey there, welcome to saas.unbound, brought to you by saas.group. I'm your host, Anna Dana, and this is the show where we chat with inspiring founders and experts to get an inside scoop on how they made their business a success. And today with me is Sven, co-founder of Sastrify, a virtual SaaS service procurement software that improves SaaS operations management and SaaS spending. They raised about $32 million, if I'm not mistaken, over the last 3 years, and are actively winning the world's procurement market from Cologne, Germany, which is fascinating. How are you doing that? Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Anna. Thanks for having me. Great to be here. Yeah, well, it's been quite a ride. Actually, the 32 was just our last round this year. So there's a couple more bucks that went in over the last 3 years. But as one of our investors always used to say, fundraising is not a business model. So I think the whole point of Sastrify is really helping companies buy and manage all their software and all their SaaS stack, which then basically provides great ROI for them. So we've hundreds of happy customers so far. So it's been quite a cool ride for the past couple of years.
Okay, awesome. Well, I'd love to know more, and I know this is not your first rodeo, so maybe we can get into your background at first, right, and talk about the previous startup, because you sold it, right, and then you went to build Sastrify, which is also like a completely different thing from what you were building before. So can we get there?
Sure. So maybe the super quick background on us. So Max, my co-founder, and myself, we've known each other for about 14 years by now. So it's been a while. We've been college roommates for quite a big part of that. Then kind of like started our first company back in 2014, which was called Evo Park. We basically built payment solution for in-car payments. So anything that you could buy and pay for out of your car, mostly car parks. So quite a fun industry, actually, quite weird as well. So I spent a lot of time in car parks with gates and payment machines and stuff like that. And then after about 4.5-5 years, we got acquired. So it was quite a fun ride. Max and I stayed on board for another year and a half, 2 years almost. But both of us already knew that at one point we wanted to do something new again, something together again. That's one of the big pitfalls of founding a company, is that after that, there's not a lot of options of what you can do other than just founding another company. One of the topics that both Max and I saw in our day-to-day, because Max was the technical guy and I was more the commercial side of things, was really the topic of how we bought software, right? So that's for us, and then also the company that acquired us, the whole topic of how do we buy software, what do we actually need, what should we pay for it, just took a lot of time and a lot of effort. And then obviously also in the end, it's a huge cost bucket, right? So software by now is always within the top like 3 to 5 line items of any company. So it's really about figuring out how can I make this more efficient. And that's kind of what got us started back in 2020, so about 3 years ago.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. Well, thank you. Thank you for the intro. And I think I've only had like one other founder of a similar software on the podcast over this year. And how? So basically, I don't know. I hope it's not a rude question. What is the main differentiator between you guys and the other procurement softwares out there?
Yeah. So in the end, there's I think that the biggest focus for any kind of software that you sell right now is ROI, right? And I think that's where we really excel. So that it's really transparent in terms of, okay, I pay X amount for Sastrify, but it helped me save Y, hopefully being much bigger than X on all my other software. So I think that's what really makes a difference. Obviously, the topic of I have too much software flying around is not a new one. And as with any good idea, it would be a bad sign if nobody else thinks about that. But I think what really makes us different is that focus on being ROI positive for our customers, making sure that they really benefit from it. And then that makes like the commercial aspect of it is just much, much bigger than most of the other technical aspects.
Okay. And how are you ensuring that? Like, because again, like there are other solutions like that. How do you make sure that your ROI, and I know some numbers and they're crazy. So you're doing a really, really good job, but how are you doing that exactly?
I mean, in the end, it comes down to 3 things. I think one is the first one is processes. So that's really where we invest a lot of time in, and also a lot of product work goes into the whole part is like, how can we make it easy for companies to buy in the right way? I always like to compare it with travel booking, right? So you want to make it easy for your employees to buy software, like to book a hotel. It should be as easy as on booking.com or any other platform, but it should be within company guidelines. And I think that's kind of like what we're trying to mimic. So make it easy for them, but within the best interest of the company. So that's the first one. So just knowing what you buy and having a structure in place for that already saves you a ton of money. Then the second part for us is really quantity. So right sizing of contracts. I have 500 different licenses, and Sastrify can tell me, hey, out of those 500, did you know that only 400 have actually been used over the last 3 months? And then the third part is really the pricing piece. And that is typically the pricing intelligence. Just to give you a sense of on the Sastrify platform, we manage about 2 billion in software spend by now. So we do know quite well what you should be paying for any sort of software. And that allows us really to help procurement teams specifically, but obviously also finance teams and smaller companies to really figure out do I get a good price? Should I ask for another discount? And what does that kind of mean from a company perspective?
Okay, makes sense. And let's get to those numbers. What is on average the ROI for the companies that you're working with, and what is the highest now? Because I remember, I think that the last one I heard on another podcast was 40 times as much as they're paying for Sastrify. But yeah, what is it now?
Yeah, those are typically the regretted ones for us, because then we know we were too cheap. But in the end, no, I think we always what feels right is typically an ROI somewhere around 4 to 5x or more. That's typically when you say, oh, this really made sense for me, right? So I think that's kind of where it gets to being a no-brainer. But that being said, we definitely had outliers where it's just we've seen situations when it's obviously the one big thing comes in, and within a couple of minutes we take off 500,000 euros off that deal. So obviously you realize that, oh shit, on this one deal we've already helped create an ROI of 20, 30, 40x on our fees. So again, it's great for the customer. Sometimes it's a little bit I'd say a pity for us because obviously we could have captured more of that value.
Right. And are you planning to do anything with it? Because are you changing your pricing according to how much you're saving for your customers? Is there anything on the roadmap about that?
So we've actually experimented with it. It turns out that still for us, the pricing that works best for us, and most importantly also our customers, is really more a flat SaaS pricing based on the platform, how much they use it, how many different features they use, how many people they bring on. So it's always better to have a pricing focused on the value we deliver as a platform, and then really having the customers create that ROI for themselves. I think that was the big learning for us as well. So we experimented with percentages of savings but it always ends up in a discussion that you don't want to be in. So really the part of, hey, use this, it will make you successful. It doesn't need to make us successful. It makes you successful as a customer. That's really what resonates extremely well, and also helps us in terms of both acquisition and retention of customers.
Right. Yeah. We just had this conversation on the podcast yesterday, I think, with other founders who also changed their pricing and it just became so confusing. So they had to go back. So because no one wants to just sit there and try to compare what's better. What is the pricing plan that I need to choose? Is it going to bring me more money, or is it going to rip me off at the end? So I guess that's a great strategy.
Pricing for me is always something where the pity is that the only thing that you can do is actually trying it out, right? So you can collect as much data as you want. Obviously we did that. We looked at usage of customers, looked at what would be the perfect ROI for them. How can we extract most value from that? But in the end, it really comes down to perception, to a lot of psychology in a way. Some things that people want to pay for, others they don't feel comfortable paying for. So that's really where you end up just having to try it out.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, I wanted to come back a little bit to the very beginning, right? To raising the funds, because you've got a fascinating story there as well. You actually went with the same investors as you worked with at EvoPark. And that's really interesting because, well, we always talk about at SaaS Group how you have to build relationships with your investors or potential acquirers, and like how important it is. And obviously, it worked for you. So, could you maybe talk a little bit about that? Like, how did you, keep in contact with your investors, and how did they want to invest in this new venture again?
Yeah, so it definitely helped us, especially in the early days, already having some sort of network built up through the EvoPark time. I mean, in the end, over those like 6 years of EvoPark, we obviously spend a lot of time fundraising. We actually never understood that we just weren't a venture case, which is weird. But with EvoPark, it was just simply like, by now I understand, like, there would have been better ways to build this other than venture capital. But at the same time, obviously, everybody who put in angel money back then, and also Porsche Ventures led our Series A back then. So everybody made money on the company. So I think that was helpful, obviously, in keeping the relation. And then what we did is for Sastrify, basically, when we started thinking about who could fund the next venture, a big part of that was also like thinking about, okay, who did we really enjoy working with? Who were the people that really supported us throughout EvoPark? And then a big part of that was really like going back to them. It's like, hey, would there be interest? This is what we're gonna do. And obviously, you take out the trust base, right? I mean, we've also done now, I don't know, 14, 15 angel investments ourselves. And one of the biggest, especially if you go pre-seed and seed, one of the biggest question marks is always the team. But if you have the chance that you have worked with the team before, you can typically eliminate that to a really big part.
Okay.
And that goes both ways, actually. So it's also, if you have worked with investors before where you know they've been great investors, then it's also really good to get them back on board.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess the first one then was a bit more difficult, like the first fundraising, and the second you just went to the same people. And was it much easier to like say, okay, hey, that one was successful, like there is another one that we're thinking about, or it was just like at the beginning, just like any other new venture?
I wouldn't say, I mean, even though it was 2020, right? So in the peak of, well, maybe not the peak yet, but early days of the crazy SaaS explosion in 2021, 2022. I wouldn't say it was super easy, because in the end it was still, I think one of the big problems that we faced was that our topic was very operational. So you would have had to work in a company to understand that having a ton of software licenses is actually a problem. And that's sometimes where we ran with, like, especially VCs who weren't operators before, they just wouldn't understand the problem. So we looked for people that actually had built companies themselves that kind of like transformed in there. And then for them, it was basically a no-brainer. Okay, the problem, I understand the problem. I think your solution makes sense. Let's go. So I think the first round for us was still a tricky one, but then in the end, it worked out quite well. And then once we could show the first like 6 months to 8 months, we became cash flow positive super quickly. We got a lot of cool logos within the first couple of months. And then I think the next round was actually the one so our seed round was basically seed, and Series A in the middle of 2021 was probably the really, I'd say, easy ones compared to other rounds.
Okay. All right. But if I may ask, like, why did you go with VCs in the first place? Because, well, you've got this cool idea, and it's a problem, that it resonates with people. What was the main reason to go with the VCs?
Yeah, we debated that a lot, actually. Also in terms of what kind of business, and I think for us, one of the biggest learnings was that your business strategy kind of dictates your funding strategy. I think that's exactly the mistake we made at EvoPark, where it was like our business strategy would have asked for a more bootstrapped setup, to really, like, because it's a slow moving market. And now with Sastrify, it's a little different because here it's a fast moving market. It's also about market share and really growing fast. So you kind of need that rocket fuel. And I think that's kind of why, where we see now, like, one of our competitive advantages was that we had good access to VC money. So why not use that to grow even faster? I think that was the main discussion. So basically, if you have something that really scales with money, then venture capital is just the right funding strategy for the business strategy.
Okay, all right. And talk about scaling. You added, I think I had a number somewhere, around 100 people or more to the team in like a very short period of time. And I started thinking about it, and it's actually at first it was like, wow, this is like a big number. And then I thought about SaaS Group, and I was like, oh, but we did the same. But so and I know our challenges, like how difficult it is sometimes to add so many people and introduce them to the culture. And how did it go for you? Like, how do you work with that? Like, how do you introduce so many people, integrated them into the team?
Yeah, so basically what we did is we went from 50 to about 150 last year. And I think one of the big advantages and at the same time challenges is that we're a fully remote company. So obviously we had a big access to a global talent pool. And at the same time, you have to onboard everybody completely remotely, which is also a challenge by itself. But to be honest, I think that works extremely well, both from a business perspective, but also from a cultural perspective. I think in the end, what you have to what we do is you will not get it right? If you hire 100 people, there is no way that you will get 100 people right. So the thing what we do really is like we focus very much on the very German topic of probation periods. So it varies quite a bit in different countries, obviously, but for us, this like first 6 months of onboarding, that's really when you have to figure out like if it works or if it doesn't work. And then that's basically, so we do check-ins after the first month, the third month, and the fifth month. And then if there's a question mark on one of the three of those, that basically already tells you that it won't work out. And even before that, in hiring, we do at least 3 to 4 interviews, reference checks, plus a founder interview. So there's also quite a lot of work that goes into the hiring process already.
Okay, all right. And once they are on board, like what are the values of Sastrify? Like how are you selling the company to the new hires?
Yeah, so I think we do have a set of values that's very much built around impact and ownership. I think there's those are probably the most important things that are almost naturally given by being remote. So I can't watch like how many people, like how much somebody's working or when they're working. It's really about output, and I think that makes it extremely helpful on the focused on being focused on impact. And then for me, the second biggest one is really the people taking ownership, having a really entrepreneurial mindset, and especially in the phase we're in, right? So we're still a small company. I would still expect from everybody at Sastrify to know what we stand for and to drive that forward. And I think that's kind of what we really look for, and also what we try to bring very closely to people within the first couple of weeks.
Okay, wonderful. All right. Like I mentioned, and you mentioned a few times that you're in Germany, in Cologne. And what I see sometimes with European startups, when I talk to founders, they start with, working with a local per se market. So, and you guys went big right away. How did that work for you? Because like, again, some founders to win, for example, an American market, they would actually move to the US to just understand the culture and everything. So how did it work for you? Was there any hack to just go big?
I think I still believe very much in the topic of, or the concept of beachhead markets. So I really believe that building out one city, one country, stuff like that makes sense. And I think so it took us to be, very much north of at least close to 1 million in ARR, the first couple of customers, to think about other countries. And then what we did is basically we saw that we had interest already from other companies and other countries, and there was not really like a blocker, like from a legislation perspective or something like that, where we would say, hey, that's an issue for us. So we basically said, what we did is we hired pretty entrepreneurial people for those countries, right? We had a guy from the UK for the UK, we had a French guy for France, and we hired a Spanish person for Spain. Mm-hmm. And that basically allowed us to like have small sub entrepreneurs and just told them like, hey, go and see what happens. And then once we saw that they brought in the first couple of customers, we thought, okay, maybe it makes sense to build out a sales team there. So it was basically, I'd say rather low invest from our side for early signs. Mm-hmm. And it also, our business model allowed us to go pretty broad. And then we did a similar thing with the US. But that being said, most of that was also 2021 and 2022. So actually more 2021. So it was also in the time where only top line mattered for us. Mm-hmm. Would I do that again, knowing what we know now and basically being in a market where obviously as a venture-backed startup, it's about efficient growth, not only growth. I would probably be more careful with opening new countries as well.
Okay, interesting. So you guys are sales-led. Like, what is your main customer acquisition channel? Do you go heavily with the sales? Or do you leverage something else?
So we do have quite I'd say a healthy marketing contribution, somewhere to 20 to 30% for inbound, and then the rest is really a split between AEs and SDRs on how they basically prospecting, right? And I think then that works pretty well for us, given that I think with the strong ROI, it resonates really well with our target customers. But that's pretty much the motion that we run. So I'd say we're still predominantly outbound, but at the same time, by now, like as the market matures a little bit, we also do see more interest, more search volume, so we can go more on inbound as well.
Okay, and you're closing pretty big customers. So with the huge investment that you have and with these big names as your customers, how does that affect your roadmap? Did you have to somehow adjust it to your new customers, those that maybe are making the 60x return on their investment, or like how does it work for you?
So we run obviously product very closely to customers, and I think we have this natural motion of growing a little bit with our customers. So for us, that specifically means that a lot of our customers come obviously from a tech background or somewhere, and we're now basically moving into the more traditional sectors, right? So we obviously started up with more or less startup companies, scale ups, and now we realize that obviously over time, you then grow into, there's 400 people scale ups, but there's obviously a lot of other 400 people companies out there. So you're now building the bridge into the more, let's say, conservative market or more long-term market, right? And I think that's kind of where we are now, which definitely requires some product work. So small things like, obviously most of our early customers all run on Google. Now most of the new customers all run on Microsoft. So obviously you have some adoptions there that really go into the product, but it's from a value proposition side, it's actually very similar. So I think that's super helpful for us. But it's just a very interesting motion in terms of what you need to build to actually crack the crossing the chasm, as it's typically called, and going really into mass market or the let's say less junior companies.
Right. And like if one of your biggest customers says, you know what, like I need that feature, or I need that built into your system, do you try to work with them, or is it like, oh, we have our vision, for the next 3 years, and maybe we'll consider that, like if more people are talking about it, or it's just your vision and like no one's touching this?
Yeah, it's really in the end, it's always a prioritization topic. So we never build something just for one customer. Mm-hmm. I think it's something when, for example, we see a large customer that tells us, I need this integration, and we know whatever 10 other customers have already asked for it, then we might prioritize it to either win or retain that customer. But if it's only that one customer that requires that one thing, then we don't build it. So I think that's one of the things that we really learned from Evo Park as well. It's like you have to stay true to what like the product vision is and what customers tell you and you can't go from like one customer to the next customer in terms of features, but you really have to build a common ground and focus on those topics.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we also discussed this here, and yeah, everyone says that first of all, think about the volume of the requests and then think about like who is requesting, because like if it's just a very, very small customer, then maybe, yeah, maybe not. But if it's your huge customers that really bring the bread and the butter, then yeah, probably that's what you need to do. Okay, so the next question is, what is the main challenge so far, like working with these big customers and navigating like the smaller customers and the bigger names?
I think what was really important for us, especially this year, was also defining and redefining our ICP. Because obviously also customers changed over time, right? So you don't see that many fast growing companies in terms of headcount anymore. Nobody is growing like crazy on headcount these days, because everybody's looking at costs. So I think that's also something where we had customers who were adding like hundreds and hundreds of people every month, obviously at different needs than those that are now basically growing slower or like spending less money. So I think that was for us really important. So now what we did is we basically segmented our customers, really understood what do smaller customers look for, what is kind of like this medium-sized customer, which is kind of our sweet spot at the moment, and then what are bigger customers looking for, because that's kind of like the direction we're going. So I think that's let's say less focus on the smaller ones, really nailing it for the current ICP, which is like this medium-sized customers, and then really trying to understand what is next in terms of larger customers. I think that's kind of the way we look at it now. And that's really that was the biggest challenge this year, to understand why are some customers working out, why are others not working out. Given that we're only a 3-year-old company, there's not a lot of like historic data you can rely on. So this year was really a lot of learning for us in terms of seeing what works and what doesn't work.
Okay, interesting. It's not the first, I think it's, I don't know, 20s, 30s episode where a founder would say we are moving out of like the startups and even the SMBs towards like bigger enterprise. It's really fascinating. Is it the fact that, well, smaller companies right now are, well, not getting any bigger? They don't really have any money to spend on the new SaaS, on the new subscriptions, or is there any other reason for that?
I mean, there's definitely the part of where startups are not growing as fast in headcount anymore, and developing as part of a company. So I think there's definitely a part there. I think at the same time, especially for our business model, you need to have some sort of software stack that we make sense, right? So if you only spend 100K on software every year, then you don't need a solution that helps you save significant money on that. If you spend 10 million on software every year, then obviously our impact is completely different, right? So if I get 10% reduction, it's 10K or a million. And that also defines obviously how much value we can extract from it. So in the end, I think for us, it's a lot about that. We've seen the bigger the wheels that we're turning, the more impactful we can be. Why we made that choice. And yeah, I think, but as an overall market right now, there's no startups out there that have extra money to spend. And the whole part of, we're just going to buy every software out there, every SaaS product that helps us. Even or especially us, even we are now like, okay, do we really need this? It costs us like $300 a month, but we're still going to question it. We're still going to get rid of it. So the budgets are tight. And I think that's just, that was completely overthrown over the last 2 years.
Right. So do you use Sastrify for Sastrify?
Oh yeah, we do have Sastrify for Sastrify. It's very funny because when we started out building Sastrify, we always told people like, it makes sense when you're like 100 people plus company. And we were only like a 20 people company. So we could never understand and relate, and there wouldn't be a point of using it for us. But then now that we've grown into that size, for now it's like everything, like every software obviously we buy through Sastrify. Like our procurement team takes care of it. We use the processes that our product team builds. So it's a very fun exercise.
Okay, that's interesting. All right. So since you mentioned the ICP and like how you focused on the middle market, how long did it take you to understand your ideal customer? What did you do for it? Were there any mistakes, any learnings, challenges? Or you were just like, okay, you're
So
using a lot of software, so let's go there.
no, I think it's. I mean, one of the bigger challenges. So we had two big phases of this, right? I think the first one was really finding product market fit, which was beginning of like the first 3 to 6 months in, where we really understood. We started out with the savings topic, like, hey, we kind of save you money, but that was like in the heights of venture capital, so nobody cared about saving money, but they all cared about saving time. So once we understood that part, our pitch was not we're gonna save you the money on it, but we're going to save you time on it, and it pays for itself because we also save you money on it. So that was the big switch, and that really, like, from 1 month to the other, you could see like, oh, this resonates really well with customers. We get them in. And I think then obviously we've grown super fast for the last 2 years, and then this year we saw the first couple of customers where we thought, maybe it's not working out for them for whatever reason. So we really dive deeper into those kind of customers and understood, okay, maybe this customer is too small, right? If you only have 100K software spend, but you pay 30K for Sastrify, pretty obvious that that won't make sense. So those kind of combinations where we understood, like, okay, we need higher spend, we need more complex customers. Also, our value prop became more sophisticated, so we needed more, let's say, sophisticated or complicated setups to work in, which pushed us up market a little. And I think that's what we did for the bigger part of this year. So it's obviously a lot of number crunching, a lot of speaking to customers, and really like, and you probably have to do that every year or every other year anyways, just to keep up with the market.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So just a couple more questions. First one is, so far, what has been the biggest win and the biggest failure for the company or for you as a leader, as a founder, personally?
I think the biggest win for us has really been getting where we are right now in such a small period of time. And at the same time, we quickly touched upon this, but I think really building out the team that's working so well together in that remote setting. I think that was, for me, that's still the biggest win. I always like to say that there's a big part of what I enjoy about building companies is the people you meet along the way. And now there's 150 people that I hadn't known 3 years ago. So it's quite a fun that I now enjoy working with every day. So I think that's kind of the big benefit. And that's, for me, the biggest win. I think in terms of failure, we could have seen a couple of things earlier, right? In hindsight, I would have gone probably more conservative, even though the markets were that hot. I would have probably, not opened that many countries at once, not onboarded that many customers in so many different regions, but sticking more to what works. That's probably, like, we obviously wasted a ton of money on stuff that now in hindsight you could have seen coming that it won't work. But that's a little bit of I guess that's just, at the same time, it's a hindsight discussion in the end. Knowing now, it's obviously much easier.
Right, absolutely. All right, thanks for sharing that. And well, the last question is about a hack. So could you share, because you're obviously very happy about the team and you guys are growing incredibly. So what is your hack for sustainable growth of a company of that size already? How to, I think I asked that before, like how to onboard so many people and make sure they all work perfectly together, how to onboard your customers, how to, bring the vision out there, how to be, I mean, you're probably like the first face I see when I open LinkedIn every day, because there is the ad of Sastrify everywhere. So yeah, is there a hack?
I mean, I think it's a combination of many things. I think if I'd go for my top two, probably one is definitely around being close to the customers and charging them as early as you can. I think that was, for us, one of the biggest things at the beginning, and I always tell it to any startup I speak to, is like, you have to ask them for money. If they don't pay you, then you never know if they really perceive value from it. So we had the first customers when it was only Max and myself, with, like, basically we used Asana as a repository for their contract. So it was like, we started with revenue and then we built the product. I think that's probably a little extreme, but that's definitely one that gets you very far. And then I think the second one in terms of people, so the single biggest difference for me in hiring people is reference calls. And I still see way too little companies doing that. So for us, everybody who joins Sastrify has at least 2 reference calls that we do for them, because in the end, that's the only thing. And it doesn't get you to 100%, but it filters out a very big amount, and we avoided a very big amount of mistakes through those reference calls.
Oh wow, that's interesting. I think I've never heard any founder say that. I don't think, did I have a reference call? I should ask my manager.
You wouldn't believe how many people send you, like, we always ask for reference. So if somebody tells you, I can give you a reference, it's a red flag. If somebody sends you a reference and then the reference tells you, you should not hire this person, then it's also a big red flag.
Oh, sure.
And both of those things happen frequently. So it's really that even when you have a really good feeling, ask for 1 or 2 reference calls. The good people always give you 1 or 2 references. And even if they give you references who are their, I don't know, brother, best mate, whatever, they're at least smart enough to give you that good reference rather than sending you something and then it turns out to be a bad reference. So yeah, for us, we wouldn't do it anywhere else to hire people.
Okay, super cool. And I mean, I can only back up the first hack that you shared, because I think to start like with a service per se, just to see if people need that job to be done. I think that's brilliant. And then, you just validate your idea and you move on with building a product. But before, yeah, maybe it's just too early.
Yeah, fully good. I mean, the only thing there is you have to know that you have to see a path to actually productize it, because otherwise you end up being a service business.
Absolutely. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you. Thank you so much for the story and for the hacks. I think they're awesome. I'm collecting this, hacks to one day just release all of them. So yeah, thank you for sharing. It's a great story. I'm really fascinated to see like where you guys are going next year. So hopefully we can do it again sometime.
Sure. Thanks for having me, Anna.
Thank you and take care.